3 years after her daughter disappeared, Latasha Green saw a familiar face not in a dream, but on Google Maps. Atlanta, a warm evening in early summer. The breeze carried the sweet scent of magnolia through the open window of a third-floor apartment in Westview, where Latasha Green sat at the kitchen table facing her old laptop. It had been 3 years since her daughter Imani Green vanished without a trace from a Christian summer camp in North Carolina. 3 years of Flyers media interviews and unanswered phone calls. The screen glowed with a pale blue light. Latasha opened Google Maps not for any particular reason, just a habit whenever she thought about Imani. She moved the cursor slowly across the Charlotte area, where a stranger had once sent an anonymous message, claiming they'd seen a girl who looked like your daughter at a community event near a Pentecostal church. She zoomed in on a street near the church, then stopped cold. A street view image from 2 years ago, a young black girl with braided hair wearing a purple hoodie with the words STEM Queens, the exact one Latasha had bought Imani when she received that summer scholarship. The girl was walking beside a man in a dark suit, his head slightly bowed, his face blurred according to Google's standard. Latasha shot to her feet, her chair crashing to the tiled floor. No way that's her. In that moment, the world choked, by 3 years of silence, began to move again. And for the first time in a long time, Latasha believed she might be close to finding her daughter. Latasha Green was born and raised in Atlanta's West End, a predominantly black neighborhood steeped in soul jazz and the legacy of the civil rights movement. She worked nights as a nurse at a community clinic, a job that left her constantly sleep-deprived, but just enough to support herself and her daughter in a small 3-room apartment. To everyone around her, Latasha was a pillar of strength, but inside, she'd been broken ever since Imani disappeared. Imani Green, 12 years old, a 6th grader, wasn't just her mother's brightest hope. She was the light of their entire neighborhood. Imani loved science, especially robotics. She had a knack for building little gadgets out of old parts, a mini ping-pong ball launcher, or a paper robot that lit up using coin batteries. Once she told her mom, "Someday, I'm going to build a factory that turns trash into power, so the lights won't go out when you're working nights." That passion made Imani stand out at school, a public school lacking equipment, but full of dedicated teachers. Her science teacher, Ms. Rains, helped her apply for a prestigious summer program in North Carolina. When the acceptance letter came, the whole block celebrated. Everyone saw it as a win for the community. Latasha still remembered the morning she put Imani on that bus. Her daughter wore a brand new purple hoodie backpack slung across her shoulder, clutching a notebook packed with formulas. That final hug turned out to be forever. Their apartment sat right next to Mount Calvary Baptist Church, where Latasha once served as treasurer for the women's ministry. Faith used to be her foundation, but after Imani disappeared, even gospel songs made her choke up. She still prayed every night, but the prayers were no longer peaceful. They were filled with rage, doubt, and one question that haunted her: why my daughter? The neighborhood around her was full of heart, but choked by limited resources and systemic neglect. When Imani went missing, Latasha expected a swift response. Instead, the local police logged it as a juvenile possibly leaving voluntarily. No camera checks, no phone records pulled. They treated Imani like a statistic, not a child. If she were white blonde-haired, they'd have a whole SWAT team out by now, Latasha's sister, a high school teacher, once said. Latasha printed hundreds of flyers, walked every block, knocked on gas stations and libraries. She visited TV stations, but all she got was polite sympathy. Promises to look into it quietly faded away. Only a few grassroots groups, mostly led by other black mothers, stepped up. A group called Black Mothers, rising in Houston, helped her launch a Facebook group, organize prayer circles, and push the hashtag #bring Imani home. Every share felt like oxygen to a heart running out of air. Nia, Latasha's best friend since high school, never let her stand alone. Now, a child advocacy attorney, Nia cut short a vacation and drove from New Orleans to Atlanta just to sit with her through the night when the news broke. "We're going all the way," she said. Over the past 3 years, Latasha had made more than 14 trips to North Carolina. Each time she visited the academy, which now refused to speak to the press, then quietly stopped by churches, diners, and places the students used to go. She questioned vendors, Uber drivers, even posed as a volunteer to attend services at a small church someone claimed to have seen Imani in. all silent efforts, seen by no one except a mother. Imani's room remained untouched. Her stuffed bear rocket still lay tilted on the bed. In the drawer, Latasha kept handwritten notes from her daughter, many signed, "Love you to Mars," and back. And then, there was that purple hoodie. Latasha had once thought about washing it and packing it away, but couldn't bring herself to. It was the last thing that still held Imani's warmth. So when she saw it on Google Maps and that blurry 2-year-old Street View image, she knew it instantly. It wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't false hope. It was a mother's instinct. Latasha reopened the case file, called Nia, sent the image to the Facebook group. In her mind, fragments of faith began to fit together into one clear belief: I'm going to find her. And this time, no one's putting out that fire. Imani Green, 12 years old, was Latasha's only child and the only light left after a broken marriage. Bright, sensitive, and passionate about science, Imani was affectionately known as the little inventor around her South Atlanta neighborhood, where most families were working class and black. While other kids spent their summers watching TV, Imani tinkered with LED light circuit boards and an old laptop her mom got from a donation center. That June, Latasha had finally saved enough to send her daughter to a 2-week STEM summer camp in North Carolina run by a private Christian academy. The program promised to inspire young black talent and boasted partnerships with major educational charities. To Latasha, it felt like a once-in-a-lifetime chance. What she didn't know was that her trust would turn into an unending nightmare. On the second day of camp, Imani called home. Her voice buzzed with excitement. "Mom, we built a heart rate monitor with foil." One of the kids thought I was a teacher. Latasha smiled. She could hear her daughter's laughter mixed with the soft hum of insects in the woods. Her heart felt warm. It was the last time she would ever hear her daughter's voice. The next morning, Latasha received a call from the academy. The woman on the line sounded calm, too calm. "We are currently unable to locate your daughter on the premises. It's possible she left the academy grounds last night." Latasha froze. "Left a 12-year-old girl in the middle of the woods. We are conducting checks. But since there's no sign of criminal activity, we haven't contacted law enforcement." Latasha didn't hear the rest. She grabbed her car keys and left immediately. The drive from Atlanta to the camp took 5 hours. She didn't stop. On the way, she called the local police, only to be told they couldn't act until 24 hours had passed. When she arrived, around 3 a.m., security stopped her at the gate. "You're not allowed in at night without authorization," they said. Latasha screamed, "My daughter is missing." But they didn't budge. One guard told her to return in the morning. She sat in her car, rain pelting the windshield, sobbing in silence. The next morning, Latasha entered the academy office. Everything felt normal. Staff walked by. A bell rang, no panic, no concern, as if a missing child was nothing unusual. Imani's room was untouched, backpack, books, personal items still there, except for her purple hoodie. Her phone dead was left charging halfway on the desk. Under her pillow was her precious notebook, filled with engineering notes. It was like she had vanished from thin air. Latasha asked to review the security footage, only to be told the system was under routine maintenance. When she pushed for stored data, the technician shrugged. No backup for that day. She questioned every teacher, every student. They spoke in rehearsed phrases. "I don't know. Not sure." Imani was quiet. Maybe she wandered off. The police opened a file 48 hours later, but marked it clearly. No signs of foul play. No Amber Alert. No large-scale search. Just a few questions, a missing persons report, and silence. Latasha refused to stop. She pitched a tent near the academy, printed flyers, interviewed local residents. A woman at a gas station recalled a gray van parked near the back gate for a long time that day. A diner worker said he saw a girl matching the description being led away by a man in a long black coat like a pastor. 2 weeks later, one of Imani's roommates, Kayla, slipped a note into Latasha's bag. "Mom, there was a pastor named Monroe. He talked to Imani alone after service. She didn't come back. Our teacher said we're not supposed to talk about it." Latasha began investigating Reverend Elijah Monroe. She discovered he wasn't affiliated with any official denomination, had no permanent church, but was frequently invited to speak at private schools and camps across the South, especially those serving black students. Stranger still, wherever he appeared, at least one child would leave the program. No charges, no investigations. 3 years passed. Latasha never stopped. She lost her job, sold her car, moved in with her sister to keep the search going. Nia, her best friend and attorney, helped organize case files, submit appeals to over 20 agencies. Everyone was denied. No evidence. Out of jurisdiction. Until one night in June, Latasha opened Google Maps to check the location of a church in Charlotte. At a street corner near Zion Grace Temple, she spotted an old image, a young black girl in a purple hoodie walking beside a tall man in a black suit. She zoomed in. Her hands began to tremble. It was Imani, and the man, unmistakable, was Elijah Monroe. She took a screenshot, sent it to Nia. She couldn't wait. The very next morning, Latasha boarded a bus to Charlotte. At Zion Grace Temple, she disguised herself baseball cap, dark glasses, and sat in the back row. The Easter service began. The choir sang. Then Pastor Monroe stepped out, older hair grayer, but the same presence. "We must save the young souls that have gone astray," he preached. Latasha felt her breath catch. Every word stabbed at her memory. When the service ended, he greeted the congregation. She stepped forward and whispered, the mother of Imani Green." Monroe froze. His face dropped. A beat later, he forced a smile. "Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss." Latasha didn't say another word. She looked straight into his eyes and knew. He recognized her, and he knew she recognized him too. That night, she posted on social media, "We're about to expose what they've buried for 3 years." This was no longer just a missing persons case. This was a pattern, a system, and Latasha Mother Nothing More was about to confront it head-on. Latasha didn't sleep the night after Easter service. She sat by the window of her motel room, hands trembling around a lukewarm cup of coffee, eyes locked on the screenshot from Google Maps. Every detail was crystal clear: the purple hoodie, the gate, the same sneakers she'd bought for Imani before summer camp. At 2 a.m., Nia called. "Are you sure the image is blurry?" "I'm sure. 100%. Nia was silent for a moment, then said, "This is the first piece of real evidence that could tie Monroe to the case, but it's only the beginning. We need to find Imani, or someone who's seen her." Latasha took a deep breath. "I'm going back to the church." The next day, after the evening service ended, she didn't go inside. Instead, she stood outside watching as members filed out. A teenage girl, maybe 15, with coiled curls and a beige jacket, stopped when she met Latasha's eyes. Latasha approached and whispered, "Have you ever seen a girl named Imani here?" She used to wear a purple hoodie. The girl glanced around as if afraid someone might hear, then answered softly, "Yeah, but here we call her Mercy." Latasha felt her chest tighten. She fought to stay calm. "Where does Mercy live?" "In the dorm building behind the church, but we're not allowed near it. If anyone asks, they say it's for special students." Latasha thanked her and stepped back. Her mind raced with questions. If her daughter was alive, why hadn't she called? Was she being held, or had they turned her into someone else? That night, Latasha returned to the dorm building. She watched in silence, a 3-story structure set apart, surrounded by high fences and dead-angle cameras. The lighting was dim. There was only one entrance, guarded by a man in uniform. No sign, no label. She stayed in her car all night taking notes. Around 3 a.m., a small food delivery truck arrived. A line of girls in gray uniforms emerged, moving silently, obediently. No one spoke. Among them, Latasha thought she saw a familiar shape, tight curls, petite frame. But then they vanished into the dark. The next day, she contacted Black and Missing in Charlottesville, a grassroots group of mothers fighting to find their forgotten loved ones. A member named Darius, a former investigator, agreed to help. Darius and the team discovered the dormitory was actually a non-profit recovery center operated by Zion Grace Temple. On paper, it claimed to offer alternative education for youth in special circumstances. But there were no registered teachers, no known graduates, no safety audits on record. "Sound familiar?" Darius said. "It's a shell. They're using it to confine these girls, no questions, no oversight." Latasha shivered. "If Imani's in there, I need to see her." A week later, the team planted hidden cameras outside the gate. They captured several clips. In particular stood out a young black girl with curly hair, stepped out to collect a package from a delivery driver. She wore a gray uniform, eyes cast down. But as she turned to walk away, Latasha gasped. She knew that face, that look. It's her. Darius watched the footage repeatedly. Something's off. She doesn't look up. Her movements are mechanical, like someone trained her. Latasha said nothing. Pain surged through her chest. If Imani had been reprogrammed to forget her own mother, what could she do? In the days that followed, they interviewed two young women who had escaped the system. One, named Tasha, said, "They teach us to forget our old families. If we remember, we get punished. Hours of scripture. Forced to change our names, our memories." Another, now 20, described it as a daily mind reset. Latasha lowered her head, whispered Imani might still be alive, but she's not Imani anymore. One night, she dreamed again. Imani sat on a park bench, watching her from afar. When Latasha called her name, the girl just smiled, then turned and disappeared into the woods. The next morning, she made up her mind. Going in, no matter what. This was no longer a missing child case. This was a stolen soul, wiped of her memories, trapped inside a system built to consume not just childhood, but identity itself. Latasha Green entered the second week of her plan to infiltrate the dormitory. No longer just a grieving mother, she had become a full-fledged investigator, supported by Black and Missing and her longtime friend, Nia. But the deeper she dug, the more it felt like she was being pulled into a spiritual labyrinth, where the boundary between justice and faith had been bent, warped into something unrecognizable. With help from Darius, Latasha secured a volunteer role at Zion Grace Temple, officially to assist in the kitchen and help maintain the church grounds. It was a risky move. If anyone uncovered her real identity, the consequences could be severe. Still, she pressed forward, willing to sacrifice everything. Her first week was filled with silent observation, cleaning classrooms, preparing meals, keeping her face hidden beneath a mask and cap. Yet every day, she traced the path from the main chapel to the back of the property where the dormitory stood, sealed off from the outside world. Then, one afternoon, as she hauled trash behind the church, she saw a group of girls in gray uniforms lined up for exercise. They moved in eerie silence, mechanical in rhythm, without a word or a laugh. Among them, a girl with curly hair suddenly turned her head. Her eyes locked onto Latasha's for just 1 second, but it was enough. It was Imani, her daughter. She didn't smile, didn't react. But those eyes, they were still hers. Hollow, yes, but unmistakably Imani's. That night, Latasha broke down alone in a supply closet, whispering to the darkness, "Do you know it's me?" Later, Nia called with news. She'd uncovered the church registration for the dormitory. In the last 5 years, 7 children had undergone what the organization called spiritual transformation. Every one of them had come from a single-parent Black household. When Latasha asked what spiritual transformation meant, Nia answered with hesitation, it was the practice of stripping children of their names, their memories, and tying them to a rigid form of belief that didn't allow questions or escape. "And what happens if they resist?" Latasha asked. The silence on the line said everything. The next morning, Reverend Monroe summoned Latasha to his office. For a brief, chilling moment, she thought her cover was blown. But no, he only wanted to thank her for her dedication. His tone was calm, but there was a knowing edge to his words. "You seem like someone who's searching," he said, turning the cross in his hands. "But sometimes the search itself can be a kind of temptation. Faith should free us, not bind us to illusions of the past." As she left the office, Latasha's mind spun. Maybe he knew, or maybe he wanted her to know that he knew. That night, while tidying the prayer room, she found a tattered notebook wedged behind a statue. Inside were scrawled desperate words. "My name is Jada. Mommy, do you still remember me? I miss you. But I'm scared they can read my thoughts. I try to forget you every day so they won't punish me. But every night I say your name in my head." The words shattered her. This wasn't Imanibut. It was another child stripped of her identity, forced to forget her own mother. She made a copy and gave it to Darius. He nodded grimly. "If we find Jada, we've got a real witness. And maybe she knows something about Imani." The next day, they found her. Jada, now 16, living in a temporary shelter in Raleigh, after being transferred out of Zion. When Latasha showed her the notebook, the girl wept. "That's mine. I thought they destroyed it." She told them about Imani, how they'd renamed her Mercy, how they used medication repetition, even hypnosis, to erase her past. She forgot her birthday, Jada said. She only listened to Monroe. Latasha cried, unable to picture the horrors her daughter had endured. But Jada held her hand and said softly, "There's still a part of Imani in there. I believe that. Someone just has to wake it up." That night, Latasha sat awake again, staring out her motel window, the streetlight cutting through the mist, like a spotlight on the memories playing in her mind. Jada, Imani, the girls in gray uniforms. So many faces, so many lost childhoods. Nia sent more intel. 2 girls had been transferred from Zion to out-of-state re-education centers. One of them had vanished again. "They're not just brainwashing these girls," Latasha said. "They're moving them like cargo." Darius suggested going public, but Latasha hesitated. "If we go to the press now, they'll move Imani. Well, lose everything." She made a decision. One last time, she would try to reach Mercy Tree to reach her daughter. It was Pentecost Sunday. Over 200 people packed the sanctuary. Latasha blended in with the volunteers, setting up chairs, food, and water. In the confusion, she slipped toward the dorms. A side door was cracked open. She stepped inside, white walls, mounted cameras, a long hallway. And there, in a small room, was Imani sitting by the window reading. The light touched her face. Same curls, same skin. But none of the spark she remembered. "Imani," Latasha whispered. "Can you hear me?" The girl looked up, blank stare, then a slight furrow, a flicker. "It's me," she choked. "Mama Latasha. 1 second, 2. The girl turned her head and went back to reading. Latasha backed away, heart splintered. But just as she turned to leave, another girl, maybe 10, walked up and silently pressed a small piece of paper into her hand. 5 words. That's all it said. "Mercy cries every night." Latasha clutched the note, weeping silently. Her faith had crumbled and been reborn. If Imani still cried, she still remembered, still felt, still hoped. That night, in a small conference room at Black and Missing, the team began planning their biggest move, yet rescue. "We'll need cameras, witnesses, a lawyer, and an emergency injunction," Nia said. "Otherwise, Latasha could be arrested the second she steps through the gate." "And someone to disable the cameras," Darius added. "We'll also need a floor plan, someone who's worked there." One member offered, "I know someone, a former volunteer who quit after being forced to teach cleansing doctrine. She's ready to testify." Latasha looked around the room and thanked every person there. None were police, none had authority, but all of them had something the system didn't resolve. "For Imani," she said, "and for every child who'll follow if we don't act now." They joined hands, a small circle, but unbreakable. And as this chapter ends, we don't just see a mother searching. We see a woman willing to confront an entire system, a community rising, a plan set in motion. Latasha tucked the note "Mercy cries every night" into her shirt pocket and walked out of the shadows toward the door she thought had been shut forever. Latasha Green was out of time. She knew the window to reach her daughter was closing fast. That hastily scribbled note "Mercy cries every night" wasn't just a sign of hope. It was a warning. If she didn't act now, she could lose Imani forever. With the support of Black and Missing, Latasha and Darius launched a bold plan. No waiting for police. No waiting on court orders. Together with a team of investigative journalists and 2 civil rights attorneys, they prepared a surprise welfare check, hoping to confront Zion before the organization could erase all evidence. Over the next 3 days, they gathered new testimony from 2 former students, one now living in Ohio, the other a 15-year-old black teen who had escaped Zion 3 months earlier. The boy was clear Mercy isn't allowed to talk to anyone. Every time she asked about her mother, they drugged her and locked her in the mirror room. Latasha nearly collapsed when she heard those words. The mirror room, long rumored to be a place of isolation, was said to force children to sit for hours in absolute silence, face to face with their own reflection, until their minds began to question what was real and what was memory. The day of action came, 4 a.m. on a Friday. A gray, unmarked van pulled up 3 blocks from Zion. From it, 7 people stepped out, silently approaching the church compound. In their hands were emergency inspection orders, an 80-page dossier of evidence, and a key video clip showing Mercy stopping in her tracks at the mention of Peach Cabrera memory trigger. But when they arrived, Zion was not the same. The front doors were locked. No lights, no singing, not a single child in sight. One journalist, Joanna, who had once been a member of Zion, immediately noticed the signs. The grounds had been scrubbed clean, patches of dirt freshly overturned, security cameras removed. Something was wrong. They broke through a rear entrance. Inside, it was cold and empty. The dormitory had been sterilized, beds made with fresh sheets, but no personal belongings, no signs of life. Everything gone. Latasha searched every corner calling for her daughter, but the only sound was her own voice echoing back. In the prayer room, she collapsed to her knees. On the cold tile floor lay a broken crosser cross, the one she wore every day. She clutched it to her chest, like the last ember of hope. Joanna, searching the altar cabinet, found an old Bible. Folded inside was a note. The handwriting was shaky, almost desperate. "Mama, I hear you, but they make me stay silent. Don't trust him. Don't trust anyone in white. I love you." "Mercy," Latasha screamed. Everyone in the room froze. This was it, a living handwritten message from her daughter. They called the police immediately, but when officers arrived, Zion's leadership refused to cooperate. Reverend Monroe was gone. A female coordinator stepped in to speak. "All students have been sent on a spiritual retreat out of state," she said. "We will provide a list upon official request." But that list never came. In the following days, Zion announced a temporary shutdown for maintenance. Student records vanished from the system. Anonymous letters were sent to attorneys warning them to stay out of the internal matters of the faith community. 1 month later, Zion closed its doors for good. No charges were filed. No students were accounted for. Mercy Amani had disappeared again. Latasha spiraled into depression. She cut off contact, turned off her phone, and stopped attending meetings. Then a letter arrived from Detroit from a mother named Cassandra. Her story mirrored Latasha's. Then another came from New Orleans, and one from Charlotte. Each woman had lost a child under eerily similar circumstances. Each had heard of Zion. Latasha came back. She, Nia, Darius, and their legal team founded a new organization, the Unforgotten Daughters. Its mission: investigate disappearances tied to extremist religious institutions and support families abandoned by the justice system. Latasha stood in front of the camera, appearing on national television for the first time. Her voice was steady. "I don't know if my daughter is still alive, but if she remembers me, even in a dream, I need her to know her mother never gave up." A media campaign was launched. The hashtag #MercyIsImani spread. Her story made CNN's front page, then Huffington Post. Lawmakers in Georgia opened hearings into the oversight of residential faith-based programs. Imani had not yet been found. But for the first time in 3 years, Latasha wasn't alone. And children like Imani at last were no longer invisible. Latasha Green sits in the small office of the Unforgotten Daughters, beside a faded photo of Imani beaming smile, thick curly hair, eyes full of spark. 3 years since her daughter vanished, and 6 months after Zion Grace Temple was shut down, Latasha has not given up the search. Every week she receives an average of 4 emails from families with similar stories: mothers, fathers, grandmothers, black, brown, indigenous, all bound by the same wound. Their children disappeared from schools, from homes, from communities. Police reports are brief, likely a runaway. Latasha now hosts free trauma support sessions. She brings in black therapists, community organizers, even retired FBI agents who specialized in missing persons. These are spaces where families find more than resources. They find the rarest thing: someone who believes them. One day, a teenage girl walks into the office, hoodie worn, thin dark circles under her eyes, hands shaking. Her name is Layla, 14 years old. She says she escaped from a faith reform camp in Texas. As social workers call for protective custody, Layla turns to Latasha and asks, "You're Mercy's mom, right?" Latasha freezes. "You saw her?" "Yeah," Layla whispers. "We were in the same room for a few nights. They moved her because she kept talking in her sleep. She kept saying, 'Mommy.' I asked who that was. She just cried." Latasha breaks down and holds Layla tight, and for the first time in a long time, she lets herself believe her daughter is still alive, still calling for her in dreams. Nia, her closest friend, is now the official spokesperson for the organization. Darius organizes hearings on Capitol Hill. pushing for new legislation to oversee private residential programs. In Georgia, a former teacher turned senator proposes anonymized law requiring random inspections and public student records from any faith-based youth institution. The law passes with overwhelming support after a clip of Latasha crying on national television goes viral. The law begins. We did not fail these children because they disappeared. We failed them because we refused to see. During a storage cleanout, Latasha finds her old phone from her volunteer days at Zion. The battery's dead, but after restoring it, a single unheard audio file emerges. If you hear this, I'm sorry, mommy. I'm so scared, but I won't forget you. Imani, your daughter. No matter what they make me do, it'll always be yours. She collapses onto the floor. The recording is just 21 seconds, but it is everything. At the end of the Netflix documentary, The Forgotten Mercy, released in 2024, the audience hears that recording. Then a message appears, Imani Green missing since 2021, still not found. If you have information contact, The Unforgotten Daughters. The film becomes a centerpiece at the Peabody Awards, inspiring hundreds of grassroots nonprofits. Over 20 cold cases are reopened after its release. A year later, Latasha returns to Zion's abandoned campus. The grass is waist-high. On the cracked brick walls, graffiti reads, "We see you, Mercy." She was here. She sits on the front steps holding the same cross that once broke and has now been mended. She whispers, "I'm still here. I still hear you, and I won't stop until you hear me too." The camera pulls away, a lone figure in ruins, but her voice echoes, "You are not invisible. You are Imani Green, my daughter, and the world will know your name." Latasha is no longer just a mother searching for her child. She's become a symbol for thousands of black mothers across America. Mothers dismissed by systems, forgotten by communities, labeled overreacting moms. She's invited to speak at national summits. At a gathering at Howard University, she tells a packed auditorium, "My daughter was a child, not a runaway, not broken. She was human, and she deserved to be found." The room erupts in applause and tears. A freshman student steps up, hugs her, and whispers, "You make me believe that if I ever went missing, my mom wouldn't stop either." The Unforgotten Daughters grows beyond anyone's expectations. They don't just take tips. They teach families how to act in the first 24 hours, how to use social media to spread alerts, and they operate a 247 hotline. Every year they host Evening of the Unfound, a candlelight event, where families read names of the still missing leave messages on a wall of hope. Latasha keeps a private drawer holding all things Imani, a hair clip, kindergarten drawings, the handwritten note that said, "Mercy cries every night," and that 21-second recording. She rarely appears on TV now. This story doesn't need more sympathy, she once told NPR. It needs truth and change. But every birthday, she posts a letter on the organization's site. Simple words, devastating clarity. Today you turn 15. I don't know where you are, but I hope you still remember who you are, and that I'm still waiting. Alongside activism, Latasha invests in tech. She partners with Black engineers in Atlanta to build Where You At an app that connects schools, community centers, and families to send out real-time missing alerts within a 5-mile radius. The app uses AI to recognize physical descriptions. In its first year, it helps locate 27 missing children. By 2025, the Unforgotten Daughters becomes a national model. A proposed federal bill, the Black Missing Justice Act, reaches Congress. If passed, it would mark the first time the U.S. allocates a dedicated budget to investigate missing cases from communities of color. Latasha never wanted to be a hero. She's just a mother. And maybe that's why she became unstoppable, because her love was the kind that doesn't quit. A reporter once asked her, "If you had known this journey would take years with no resolution, would you still choose it?" She didn't even hesitate. It wasn't a choice. It was instinct. At the end of that year, a video goes viral on TikTok. A girl, maybe 16, playing piano in a small Kansas church. The angle, the nose, the hair, it all resembles Imani. The video gets over 4 million views. But by the time the team arrives, she's gone. Latasha doesn't despair. She smiles. As long as someone's still looking, she's not gone. On December 31st, Latasha and the team light candles at the old Zion Grace Temple. On cracked stone, they draw hearts, and write the names of the still missing. She stands in the cold, in the dark, holding a candle, and whispers, "Imani, can you hear me? I'm still here. And I've never stopped searching." The camera slowly pulls back. City lights flicker in the distance, but at the center of the frame is her flame, a small light, still burning. Latasha is still waiting, and so are thousands of other families. Every missing child is an entire world that never got to live fully, and every person who still remembers, still searches, still tells their story, becomes a beam of light in a darkness that grows heavier by the day. If you've ever seen Imani or any child who might be in danger, don't stay silent. Silence has already stolen too many years. Be the first to speak. If you've ever lost faith in the system, look at Latasha. One mother, one small candle, but bright enough to ignite an entire movement. Do you believe Imani is still out there, or do you wonder what could make a child vanish from all our sight? I'm the one telling this story, and I believe as long as one person remembers, that's enough to light a lantern in the night. Subscribe to this channel to help us keep telling the stories that the world has forgotten. And if you carry the name of someone still missing in your heart, don't let it stay silent any longer.